and hope all of you are doing well today. It's Rosh Hashana, Daf Yomi. We're going to be learning from the Mishnah on the top of the page until about 5 lines to the bottom on Tezayin of the base. This Gemara is Rubo Kikulo Agata. That's basically blood. And it's just interesting to note as we're discussing where din takes place. We see about on-the-daf. It's that halachic Mishnah being judged throughout the year. So you should know that we cited the fact that it's halachic in nature as well, not just the courts that are might be. Let's get started to design the halachic. There's 4 times in the year the word Pesach. Pesach season is not the rains, but Zeres, Shabbos, Paris, and most familiar with Open the Venecha Tifnei Mar, the famous line from the Son of Jacob, Shemar, Yitziach Levam. Maybe no Kol Mahaseh, rhetorical comment to say that to them, what it creates their hearts, does he not understand their ways? Chagan and Sukkot Midon Malamayim, obviously because of that. Mara says, hey, Tvua. When we know, as Mishnah says, that by Pesach it's going to be Nidon and Tvua, what we're talking about, we know how to put your time. If we're talking about already, that's already been planted, that doesn't make any sense. And says the Gemara, Kohani, Harpatki, all the things that we've already done, and the Adu Allah that have already taken place, he must be still. When would they then be judged? They're already in the ground. A little late for that. It's going to be grains that will be in the future, grains that you are about to plant, not grains that you've already planted. Does that mean to imply the Chadin and Nistan? Does our mission want to imply that there's only one time of year that you're judged? Is there more than one Rosh Hashana for this Tvua? Says the Gemara, not only Tvua, people take up the time and price rights. Tvua shiur carry or onus. Had there been a rains where something happened to it, a natural occurrence, or an onus is with human intervention. You know, you're playing football and you dive and you catch it and it lands and you ruin it, whatever the case may be. So says the Gemara, Kodem HaPesach, Donos L'Shava. Before Pesach, there's one din where it looks backwards and says, all right, we have to look at what happened. That's the first part of the price. So the second part of the price is about humans. Adam shiur carry on this. If there's a person who got injured, one judgment is before him. So therefore we see it seems to be that we have in fact 2 dinim, and that's how the Gemara concludes. That was the question, and this is the answer. What about this price? That's different times of the year. Once you see that your model is going in the right direction, if you're growing something that's afla, that grows slowly like wheat, if you see that things are growing, go ahead and just chop a rind and grow something else at the same time. You should take them until you get to your day of judgment for the Tvua for themselves, able to chop a rind. So that's a great idea. It's almost a little bit of, like if you see that you're getting bracha in one area, you should, okay, if I'm already davening and Hashem listening, I'll just add more. We'll see a little bit about davening later today. So all of that is pretty clean so far. So obviously it's going to be 2 judgments here. And then the Gemara has a bit of he says, who is the Mishnah? We will see in detail. It's not any of these great Tanaim, and therefore, who's our Mishnah going to be like? But first, let's detail the other shitas of these Tanaim. Remember what our Mishnah says, that it's 4 prakim in the year that we get. That there's judgment, Pesach, Atzeres, Rosh Hashana, and Sukkot. Says the Gemara, the Tanya 1/3 of the way down. Says Ayin V'Al. The Brisa writes, "Hakol nidonim b'Rosh Hashana u'gzar din shalhem nechtam b'Yom Kippur de'Berabeh." That's not like our Mishnah. Our Mishnah doesn't say that. Our Mishnah just says that there's judgment. It doesn't say anything about the Chasim. Rabbi Yehuda Omer Hakol nidonim b'Rosh Hashana u'gzar din shalhem nechtam kol echad ve'echad bismano. Also doesn't say that in our Mishnah. Our Mishnah only talks about the din. It doesn't talk about Chasima. And says the Gemara continuing in this Brisa that if in the sheet of Rabbi Yehuda Pesach al Tvua, this language is similar to our Mishnah, but it's in a different context. It's about the Chasima. Pesach al Tvua about Tzeres al Paris Eilan, V'chagim don al Mayim, V'adam nidam Rosh Hashanah, Gzar din shalom nechem b'Yom Kippur. So that doesn't work. That also doesn't fit with our Mishnah, because our Mishnah is talking about din. This is talking about Chasima. That's shita number 2. Shita number 3. Rabbi Yossi Amar Adam nidam b'chol yom. He says a person gets judged every single day. That a person gets a pekida. He gets checked every morning. Rabbi Nosson Omer Adam nidam b'chol shah. V'shenei Amar the Rabbi Tivchanan. You get checked every hour. a person has a constant watching. Therefore, this is our question. Question mark. The question is, who fits in our Mishnah? None of them seem to fit in our Mishnah. Our Mishnah is only talking about din. Everybody else is talking about different things. The first two shitas were talking about chasima and not din. The second two shitas were talking about daily visits and not annual visits, or hourly visits and not annual visits. And if you want to say that the most aligned option is the Olam Rabbi Huda, that we're talking about Rabbi Huda. Rabbi Huda was the shita that said that everyone has their own zman, that there's a Rosh Hashana for each of them, there's din for all of them. And really our Mishnah is only talking about gzar din. That would still not work out according to Rabbi Huda, who doesn't match with our Mishnah. And Rashi very briefly encapsulates this idea. Rashi is an inch above where we are, halfway down. And Rashi, the Tani Masnis, and the author of our Mishnah wrote that it's for Rosh Hashana. That's when he gets judged. And Rabbi Huda b'Yom Kippur Mama, he says that a person's going to be judged on Yom Kippur, so they're not the same thing. So Amar Rava, you're absolutely right. Our Mishnah is not like any of these authors, not like any of these Tanaim, but rather Haitana de B'Shmuel. Our Mishnah aligns with a fifth Tana who is not quoted in this brisa, and that is the Shita of Tana de B'Shmuel. The Tana de B'Shmuel, the Arba Prakim Olamidam, same language as our Mishnah. The Pesach Alatu about Sarasal al Peros Elam, the Chag Nidam al Main, Vadam Nidam Rosh Hashana Zed Nishlam Nechtam Re Yom Kippur. So that was kind of like what our Mishnah said. Tani Mas Nisa Not Chilas Din. It's talking about the beginning of the process, not the end of the process. It's talking about the din itself and not about the chasima. And that is how the Gemara concludes. So let's summarize this second point of the Gemara. The first point, we said that there's multiple judgments for grain and for people. The second section of the Gemara, which brings us to the middle with lines, or just about there, that teaches us that our Mishnah is not like any of the four Tanaim, but rather like Tan de Rabbi Shmuel. And then two lines before the middle with lines, my time of Rabbi Yossi. What was the reason for the Shita of Rabbi Yossi? Rabbi Yossi was of the opinion, let's see what he said in the Mishnah. Let's see, that's from here. That's Rabbi Yehuda. He said that it was every day. Rabbi Yossi said every day. So says the Gemara, why are you asking me what his Shita is? Because the Kamar time. He said his own reason. The pasuk says, "Batif kadin al-bakar." It says you're being checked every day. It's a pasuk. So why? That's why he said. Says the Gemara, that's not what I mean. That's not. I don't mean why does he say what he says? Because you're right, there's a pasuk. My question is, my time of Nasan. Why doesn't he say like the other Shita, which is of Nasan, that it's every hour instead of every day? So says the Gemara, Bechina, the language of a tivchanenu in the pasuk that Rav Nasan uses, that's iyune be'alma. That's just kind of like a cursory glance. It's not a whole investigation. Says the Gemara, yeah, but your pasuk as well as the word pekida nami iyune be'alma. You, Rabbi Yossi, who says that the checking is every day, that the Kosh Baruch is going to judge you every day, that has a language of Pekida. That's also just Ian Ba'alma. It says the Gemara, the time of the Rabbi Yossi Mehacha. The Shita of time of the Rabbi Yossi Mehacha. Rabbi Yossi has a different pasuk. Lasos mishpat avdo mishpat amod Yisrael dvar yom biyomo. We see dvar yom biyomo every day, and we see in the pasuk Lasos mishpat avdo mishpat amod. That there's a judgment for the Eved, and there's a judgment for the people every day. And that is the pasuk that Rabbi Yossi uses and why he doesn't agree with Rabbi Nasan. And the Gemara has as a qualification, as an explanation, I should say, for this pasuk of Lasos Mishpat Havzo, the Gemara has a line that we've learned already. You have a king and you have its people. Then the king should be checked out first. He should be analyzed first. And based on that pasuk, my time up. What's the reason that the king would be judged before the people? One answer is it's not polite to have the king sitting outside. If you have a chashuv person, he should go first in his being checked by the king of kings. Some say no. The reason the king should go first is that before the judge with a capital J is going to get upset at all the people for all of their crimes, let him first meet with the king to have an honest meeting with him instead of first meeting with all the people. Good. Amar Rav Yosef. Rav Yosef asks a really graphically unique question. We're about 15 lines from the bottom, 5 lines into the middle with lines. Amar Rav Yosef, Kiman Matzlinan, like whom in our Mishnah would we say, or like whom in that brisa would we say Matzlinan ha'idna aktsiri va'amri'i? According to whom do we say that there's any value in davening for those who are aktsiri, those who are sick, or those who are amri'i, those who are weak? References to the weak ones are those who are the Talmidei Chachamim. They're learning. They're not working out in the gym. They're sitting and learning. They're being maybe Torah. So according to whom is it worth davening? Kiman to Rabbi Yossi. It says the Gemara, seemingly it should only work according to Rabbi Yossi, says that they daven every day, that they get judged every day. But maybe according to the way that we've often thought, we get judged on Rosh Hashanah, that's not kedai to daven. The Gzer is already in place, but what good are you? So it says the Gemara, there's two answers. You could say Rabbi Yossi, really it's like the shita that we're used to, which is that a person has a Gzera on Rosh Hashanah, annual. However, Uchad Rabbi Yitzchak. And Rabbi Yitzchak says, and this is of course what we assume, Rabbi Yitzchak, Yofet Se'aka La'adam, Ben Kodem Gzardin, Ben Achar Gzardin. That when there is Tze'aka, there are many forms of tefillah. Tze'aka is a powerful form of tefillah in a screaming type of way, on-the-daf and volume. It's an approach in tefillah. The Sefer Tefillah, shiur mitzvila. He has a whole discussion on this. Anyways, so he's saying here that it doesn't make a difference which Tana we go like, because you can always daven for those who are ill, even if the Gzardin is annual. Why? Because the power of Tze'aka overrides even a Gzardin. Tanya, Amr Rabbi Yehuda, Mishum Rabbi Akiva, Mipnei Amr Torah Hivi Omer BePesach. Why is it that we should bring the Omer by Pesach time? Says the Gemara, Misha Pesach Zman Tfuhu. That's the time, as our Mishnah indicated, when we're going to be judging, when HaKadosh Baruch Hu will be judging the grains. Amr HaKadosh Baruch Hu Hivi Lefnei Omer BePesach. Bring it in front of me. Bring me the Korban Omer on the 16th of Nisan. Kedei shetisparach lachem tvosha v'sada, so I can give a bracha to your grapes. Umipnei Amr Torah Hivi Shtei HaLechem Be'atzeres. Why is it that we should bring the Shtei HaLechem? We should bring the two breads and the korban that comes with it, Be'atzeres and Shavuos. Mipnei she'atzeres man peros ilan, because our Mishnah says that that's the time when the peros ilan are going to be judged. Amar Kadosh Baruch Hu Hivi Lefanei Shtei HaLechem Be'atzeres Kedei she'yis baruch hu lachem peros ilan. This is a good time. We're going to be judging the fruit. So bring things in front of me, and I'll give you a bracha. First of the very long lines. Why at that time do we do the nisuch hamayim? Because that's the right time of the year. This is the right time. The Gemara then adds, and this gives us a little bit of color about how our Shemona Esrei and Rosh Hashanah looks. Rosh Hashanah, and here's how you should daven Musaf for me, says the HaKadosh Baruch Hu, on Rosh Hashanah, Malchios, Zichronos, V'Shofros. These three major sections of Shemona Esrei. Malchios, what's the section of Malchios? Kedei, Shetamlichuni Alechem, to make sure that I am the king over you. Zichronos, Kedei Shi'ala Zichronechem Lefanai L'Tova. You should say those psukim, because that will then help for me to look at you in a positive way. Ubameh, how is that done? Bashofar, that's done with the shofar. Why do we have the shofar of a ram? So Amar HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and of course, this is thematic throughout davening. I want to remember on that day, please jog my memory of that day of Akedah Yitzchak ben Avram. And then 2 lines from the bottom, and I will then look at you through that same lens, that you're willing to go the extra mile, just like Yitzchak did, just like Avram and Yitzchak did. So that's why we have the aisle, that's why we have the ram. Amar Rabbi Yitzchak lama token b'Rosh Hashanah. Why do we blow shofar at all in Rosh Hashanah? Not why through a ram, but why do we blow shofar at all? Says the Gemara, lama token. These are mamish all over the Torah. Rachmana Amar Tikva, that you need to blow shofar. He says, no, that's not what I mean. Elalama Marine. Why do we do trua, the broken versions? He says that too. A Marine, you can't ask me that. Rachmana Amar Zichron Trua. That's a type of skiya shofar that we have to do. So last few words on the page, Elalama token of Marine Kshen Yoshvin. Why is it that we do skiya when we are Yoshvin? This doesn't actually mean sitting. It means before Shemona Esrei and Musaf, and then as well on the top of Tazayin of the base, and then Betoken Umrian, and then we go shofar again, Kshen Omdim. Why do we do that afterwards when we are in the midst of Shemona Esrei or after Shemona Esrei? That's why there are some shitas that some people will do the Shemona Esrei. They'll do the tkiyas in the midst of Shemona Esrei. That's what's implied here in the Gemara. And the Gemara answers the reason why we do this is kedei la'arbei hasafa. And as a ripple effect of this, if you have a case scenario where there isn't kiyas shofar on the first day of Rosh Hashanah, so then Miriam lo b'sofar, that's going to be a problem. So when does this fall out? Shabbos Rosh Hashanah. It says Tosfos, no. Take a look at Tosfos 1/3 of the way down. Dibra Maskal she'ein token b'tchilasa. It says in the Sefer of Halachos Gedolos, Lav din mikla b'shavsa. We're not talking about a case scenario where Shabbos is the first day of Rosh Hashanah. That was instituted by the Chachamim. That's very important comment of the Gemara. We're not talking about that. Ela di'is yalid onsa. We're talking about a case where there was an onis. The shofar, somebody lost it, a case scenario that, okay, it was out of your control, but we're not talking about a case of Shabbos. So that, therefore, when the Gemara says at the second line that Kol Shana She'ein Token of Tchilas and Marim of the Sofa, that we're going to end up blowing the shofar later in the year for bad things, and the Mepharshim say for fast days, says the Gemara, that's not it. That's not talking about Shabbos. It's only talking about when there's an onus. Anyways, my time, why is that to the lo yarviv satan? Because you didn't get the opportunity to confuse the satan, and that's going to cause problems for you. Rabbi Yitzchak says, Kol Shana She'Rasha, where you are poor, you'll be wealthy at the end of the year. And look at the drasha. The drasha is that the way the word meireshis is written is without an aleph. So the word looks like meirashis. Meirashis, when you are poor, a rash, a person who is destitute. See, the ad achris, that's the rest of the pasuk. So far, she is achris. The pasuk reads meireshis hashanav ad achris hashanav. So if you're a rash in the beginning, then at the end you're going to have an achris. You'll have a next stage. You'll have a future. So there's a sign of wealth there. Kadosh Baruch Hu looks at us more in a vacuum and says, how are you doing right now? That's only we look at someone as they are today. Okay, yesterday was a different day. Today is different. Kadosh Baruch Hu looks at us in that lens. 10 lines down, there are three scenarios which remind a Kadosh Baruch Hu of our actions. Elohim, here not to it. If a person, a little bit of a risk taker, he walks by a wall that's rickety, so Kadosh Baruch Hu was like, he feels so confident that the wall's not going to fall on him. Like, what's going on with this guy? Let's make sure that he's all up to snuff. The next case, the iyun tefillah. If a person has this expectation that their tefillah will be accepted, so when you have that air of confidence to you, walking in front, you're going to answer my tefillah. So what does that mean? Are you roi l'kaf? So that's the second scenario. And the last is the moser din al chaveiro, a person who turns over judgment on his friend. This doesn't mean moser in regards to like the local authorities, like the din of Masira, but rather a person says like, all right, you and I, Barugas, we have a machlokas, so Kadosh Baruch Hu will take care of you. In that kind of way, that's moser. That's what the Gemara says. That if a person points at another person and says Hashem is going to take care of you, so then they get punished for Shnei Amar, and this is an unfortunate dialogue. The pasuk says, "Vatomer Sarai Avram." Sarai says to Avram the whole story about how they weren't having children. Chamosi Alecha should put some of the onus on him. And then who died first? Avram and then he was masbid first. She got punished first for that. Very important Gemara. There are four things that tear up the gzar din of a person. Elohim tzedakah tzedakah shinui Hashem shinui ma'aseh. So that one is going to be giving charity, and then the second is tzedakah, the screaming version of davening, calling out to Kadosh Baruch Hu, changing your name. The shinui ma'aseh, also changing your behavior. Tzedakah, tzedakah tatzan limadas. Person should give tzedakah regularly. Ma'aser up to 20%. And then they should do that because of the pasuk. What about tefillah? El Hashem B'tzar. So you see in that pasuk that they called out to the Kadosh Baruch Hu, Hashem saved it. Shinoi Hashem, changing your name. The pasuk says Sarai Shlecha Lo Sikra Shema Sarai Ki Sarah Shema. Change names. Changed her name. All of a sudden she got pregnant. She wasn't able to have children. And then with the name change, she was able to have children. Shinui Ma'aser, halfway down on Tezayin and the base Shinui Ma'aser, when it comes to changing your behavior, change his mind because we changed our actions. So these are the four ways of a person getting out of a terrible gzar din: tzedakah, tzedakah, Shinui Hashem, and Shinui Ma'aser. The Yeshomrim, first of the long lines, there are some who say that that's not the case. The Yeshomrim, af Shinui Makom, even changing where you live. How do we know that this is true? Only when he left the Hadar, only then was he told to ask Goy Gadol. That's when he was told that he was going to be a Goy Gadol. So we see that changing location also works. Why didn't the Tanakama include Shinui Makom? Clearly it worked by Abram. Says the Gemara, there was something else going on there. One of the many motivators to move to Eretz Yisrael. Says the Gemara, what helped him to become a Goy Gadol wasn't the Shinui Makom. It's the Makom that he went to. Specifically, if he would have moved to Chicago, it wouldn't have helped him. But if he moved to Eretz Yisrael, so then he had his schus of the land, the Aramachtima, some of the other blessings that we know about that land. Very good. Another statement by Rabbi Yitzchak. This has been a Rabbi Yitzchak Amud. We're 3 lines into the wide lines, a little bit more than halfway down. A person is obligated to visit their Rebbe on the Regel. This is a very commonplace. Lo Chodesh v'lo Shabbos. Was talking about not Torah. What?
Past week's Torah.
Oh, I didn't know that. I wasn't listening.
You're learning Daf Yomi.
So there, the reference was, why are you going to see the Rav? It's not a Chodesh and it's not Shabbos. What's implied by that? That's appropriate to go at that time. Another Rabbi Yitzchak comment. A person has to stay pure, they have to make themselves pure on the regel. One should not even touch an avela. Tanya Nami the rest supports this idea. What is the pasuk say? You might have thought you Yisrael Muzharan al Magan Avela. We might have thought that a non-Kohen Yisrael would have been warned, would have been cautioned about becoming tummy with Tumas Navela. Says that's not true. Talmud Lomar. And more like Kohen b'nei Aaron Muzharan, b'nei Israel in Muzharan. That only applies to a Kohen. No problem for me to touch an Avela. Okay, I'd be limited to come to the base of Mikdash. There are other problems, but there's nothing wrong with it. Just like if Yisrael is allowed to touch a dead body, Kohanim Muzharim Yisrael in Muzharim, that a Kohen is not allowed to touch a mace, but Yisrael is allowed to be present and deal with the mace. Certainly, the Nevela, there should be no problem for Yisrael. So if that's the case, what's the point of the pasuk? It must be regel that on the holiday that even Yisrael is not allowed to become tummy. Amar of Krus B'doim, this is, I think, the last price we're going to learn today. Amar of Krus B'doim, Rabbi Yochanan, there's going to be 3 books that are open for Rosh Hashana. One is a very bad book that we do not want to be a part of. One is a book that we should pine to be a part of. And the Echad, and the one that's for all of us, for most of us, is Shel Benoni, for the middle people. Tzadikim Gemara, when it comes to the righteous, they're guaranteed a year. They're guaranteed that coming year. Rishayim Gemara, those who are mamish terrible, the real Rishayim, they are written and sealed for death. Benonim, what is true for most of us is during that week of Aseres Mek Shuvah, during that week, one tries to do their best because that's when the judgment on the regular people takes place. If they married in then they will be zocher to a year of life. And what's the pasuk that supports this? Amar Rav Avin Mikra. We'll see 2 different psukim. The drushes are not basic pasuk shot psukim, but nevertheless, that is the drushes of the Chachamim. The psukim read Yimachum Yisefer Chaim V'Im Tzadikim Al Yikasevu. Yimachum Yisefer, erase me from the books. That is Sifron Shel Roshem Gemur. Okay, Chaim, that's the book of life. Sifron Shel Tzadikim. In Tzadikim Al Yikasevu, the book. What does that mean? Sifron Shel Benonim. Again, the words are hard to read, but what the righteous don't, Al Yikasevu don't. Why wouldn't you want to be written? So the words are hard to get from the words to the drusha. We have to spend time on this. If we had time, we could, but we don't. But Nachum Ritzchak Amar Mehalchi says it's a different pasuk where we're going about the 3 svarim. This is, of course, the story Moshe fighting on behalf of the Jews. Erase me is a Sifron Shel Roshaim. The Sifra from your book is Sifron Shel Tzadikim. And last but not least for today, Asher Kasata, the end of that pasuk reads the Sifron Shel Benonim. So therefore, we know that we have these 3 books on Rosh Hashana. We will pick up tomorrow night in Yirtzeh Hashem at 8:40, starting with Tanya, 5 lines from the bottom. Wishing you all a beautiful day.